Top 10 in the past Valentine's Day has resulted in murder. Despite its ominous origin street, Valentine's Day is widely seen as a love celebration. Many couples will spend the day or night enjoying a romantic meal together. Not to mention all of the chocolate, flowers, and jewelry that will be handed out. Individuals will spend $1.6 billion on sweets, $1.9 billion on flowers, and $4.4 billion on diamonds, gold, and silver in 2022, all for the sake of love. But what happens when love gets out of hand? For the victims of these Valentine's Day killers, the response was murder. Number 10. John Hamilton. On Valentine's Day 2001, John Hamilton, a well-known OB/GYN, discovered his wife killed and abused on the toilet floor of their home. The murder was initially tied to the Army of God, an anti-abortion hate group, according to authorities. Prosecutors' suspicions of John Hamilton grew stronger over time, particularly after they learned that Hamilton's wife Susan had threatened divorce. Hamilton's story about finding Susan's body was later debunked by Tom Bevel, a crime scene inspector and blood spatter expert. According to Bevel, the blood spatter on Hamilton's clothes indicated that he had committed the crime himself. Prosecutors also stated that Hamilton may have had a romance with a topless dancer. During the trial, Hamilton testified in his own defense, claiming that he was soaked in blood after performing CPR on his wife. Following the conclusion of the trial, the jury needed only 2 hours to reach a decision. John Hamilton was found guilty of the murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Number 9. Gibson Paul. Gibson. A disagreement with his then-girlfriend Tamika Peterson led to Paul's untimely death in 2011. On Valentine's Day, Peterson got into a car with friends and left the apartment she shared with Paul. When Paul opened fire, Tamika Peterson, a female driver, a female passenger, and a 3-year-old toddler were all in the vehicle. A gunshot grazed one of the female passengers. After being shot 5 times, Tamika Peterson died on the scene. Paul defended himself at the start of the trial before seeking the assistance of a public defender. Prosecutors meant to seek the death penalty at first, but they changed their minds. Paul was sentenced to life in prison plus 35 years for the murder. Number 8. Amanda Michelle Naylor Mcclure. A love triangle involving Amanda Michelle Naylor Mcclure, her then-boyfriend John Thomas McGuire, and her father led in a fatal Valentine's Day in 2019. Amanda had been adopted as a youngster and had recently reconnected with her original father Larry Mcclure and sister Anna Chowdhury through Facebook. Larry Mcclure and his daughter Anna took up Amanda and John McGuire from their Indiana home in February. The gang made their way back to Larry's house in West Virginia. While the visit went well at first, within a week the father and 2 daughters began arranging McGuire's assassination. On February 14, John McGuire was strangled after being stabbed with a bottle of wine and injected with methamphetamine. McGuire was tortured for 2 days before the group buried him in the backyard. 6 days later, they dug up his body, dismembered his remains, and reburied him. The body was located on September 24, 2019, after a long search. In a surprising turn of events, Amanda and her father married 3 weeks after the murder, the reason why she now has the name Mcclure. In late 2019, they were charged with McGuire's murder. Amanda received a 40-year term, Larry Mcclure received a life sentence without the possibility of release, and Anna Chowdhury received a 40-year sentence. Number 7. Oscar Pistorius. At the 2012 Summer Olympic Games, Oscar Pistorius made history. As the first amputee athlete to compete in the Olympics, he made history. Despite the fact that he did not win gold, the media dubbed him the Blade Runner for his accomplishments. He'd recreate the new in less than a year. Riva Steenkamp, a model, was shot and killed by the former professional South African sprinter on February 14, 2013. Steenkamp was shot 4 times through a barred bathroom door at Pistorius' home. Because he felt an intruder was in the house, Pistorius claimed he didn't notice Steenkamp was in the bathroom. He claimed, "All I was trying to do was protect Riva. Pistorius was sentenced to 6 years in prison by a South African judge in 2016. After the verdict was deemed too light, the Supreme Court of Appeal increased the sentence to 15 years in 2017. After speaking with Steenkamp's parents, Pistorius may be eligible for parole. Number 6. James Carter II. In January 2009, Tiana Notice filed a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend James Carter II. Carter contacted her on several occasions, prompting her to seek police assistance in enforcing the restraining order. Since the officers did not take her request seriously, nothing was done. Carter again broke the restraining order on Valentine's Day 2009, grabbing Notice outside her apartment and stabbing her 20 times. She died 2 hours after the stabbings. Carter was sentenced to 60 years in prison in 2012, and he will be eligible for release after serving 25 years. He failed to appear for his sentencing hearing. In honor of Notice, her family founded a foundation to raise awareness about domestic violence. Since then, they've been advocating for tougher domestic violence legislation in their state. Number 5. DeMarcus Little. Anitra Gunn, a senior at Fort Valley State University, went missing on Valentine's Day 2020. When she couldn't be reached the next day, her friends and family got concerned and a search was initiated. Gunn's body was located in a wooded area 4 days later. After an autopsy, her death was determined to be a homicide. She was strangled sometime between 2:30 a.m. and 11:59 p.m. on February 14. Gunn's lover DeMarcus Little was a prime suspect. He was detained on vandalism charges after Gunn filed a report on February 5. Her car tires had been slashed and a house window had been damaged, according to the report. DeMarcus Little was charged with strangulation and murder with malice. Little has been found guilty or sentenced as of yet. Number 4. Nathan Loithold. Nathan Loithold, a former missionary and Illinois resident, was sentenced to 80 years in prison for the murder of his wife Denise. Prosecutors believe Loithold plotted a scheme to cover up his wife's murder by making it look like a burglary gone wrong. However, despite a suspiciously clean crime scene and unusual behavior, Loithold was quickly identified as the prime suspect in the February 14, 2013 murder. According to prosecutors, Loithold planned to murder his wife in order to be with his mistress, Aina Dobelaite, 21. Dobelaite was staying with the couple as a Lithuanian exchange student. The state's attorney called the murder a Valentine's Day present from the Loithold to Dobelaite. Previous internet searches, he claimed, revealed the murder was planned, such as how to silence a .40 caliber Glock. Both Loithold and Dobelaite have stated that they are not in a romantic relationship. Number 3. Stacey Shoak. On February 14, 2010, Richard Shoak drove to the park to meet his wife and exchange Valentine's Day gifts. When Richard's wife Stacey arrived at the park, he was shot to death outside of his truck. What looked to be a random act of violence was proven to be a murder-for-hire plan only 3 months later. Stacey Shoak paid personal trainer Reginald Coleman $10,000 to assassinate her husband. For the murder, Coleman and Shoak were sentenced to life in prison. Lenitra Ross, a co-worker of Stacey Shoak's who introduced her to Coleman, was also sentenced to life in prison for her role in the murder. Number 2. Anthony Williams and Kareem Brock. Anthony Williams and Kareem Brock dressed up as women and went into a 7-Eleven to rob the store on February 14, 1996. Sarah Kinajad, a 19-year-old woman, was in the store waiting for her husband. She was shot and died later that night at the University Medical Center. Kinajad was 6 months pregnant at the time. The murder of Kinajad remained unsolved until July 23, 2020. Both men have now been charged with murder and manslaughter in connection with the death of Kinajad's pregnant child. Number 1. Glenn Mccurley. After a Valentine's Day dance in 1974, Carla Walker, a senior in high school, was kidnapped from her boyfriend's automobile. Carla was kidnapped as her boyfriend was beaten and knocked unconscious. Her body was discovered in a ditch 3 days later. Before her unfortunate demise, Walker had been tormented for 2 days. Despite the fact that investigators had named individuals they suspected of being involved in Walker's murder, no charges were ever filed and the case was closed. In the year 2020, authorities were able to resuscitate the cold case. Previously, just a partial match of the suspect's DNA was available. Using new technology, investigators were able to build a precise DNA profile of the suspect. Thanks to this new evidence, investigators were able to link DNA to one of their previous persons of interest, Glenn Mccurley. Carla Walker's capital murder has been charged against Mccurley, who is now 77 years old. Throughout his trial, Mccurley altered his plea from not guilty to guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison. Walker's family begged for justice, but Mccurley had been forgiven. They assert that they are praying for him and his family.